Basic Science class. I am Ejiro Efere. Today we shall be taking a lesson from the theme learning about our environment. Today's topic is titled Environmental Hazard 1. This is the second part of this lesson where we shall continue our study on soil erosion and flooding. I hope that at the end of today's class, you should be able to describe the different methods that are used to prevent and control soil erosion. You should be able to define flood and discuss some of the causes of flood in an environment. We were introduced to environmental hazard in our previous lesson, that is in the first part of this topic. We said environmental hazards are substances, occurrences, or events that could cause damage to the environment and affect the lives and properties of organisms that are present in such environments. These hazards could be caused by human activities or it could occur naturally. Some examples of these environmental hazards are soil erosion, flooding, bush burning, desertification, depletion of the ozone layer, and deforestation. With the first one, which is soil erosion. What is soil erosion? Well, soil erosion is simply the washing away or the wearing away of the top layer of the soil. Soil erosion leads to the loss of the valuable top soil from our land. Soil erosion as an environmental hazard could lead to a lot of damages in an environment, and it is caused by different factors. We say soil erosion is basically caused by winds and water. In this case, we are referring to flowing water, either from rainfall, from irrigation, or any other source. We saw the different effects of soil erosion in an environment, and we saw some examples of those human activities that can promote the occurrence of soil erosion in an environment. In today's class, we shall be looking at some of the ways to prevent and control soil erosion. Before we proceed, let me ask you, what are some of the ways you think we can use to control soil erosion? What ways can you as a person use? What measures can you use to control soil erosion in your environment? Okay, let's look at our list. We have some examples here. We have the growing of vegetation, practice of mulching, the use of ridges, the practice of strip cropping, the use of fence and erosion blockers, the use of sandbags and brush bundles, the use of terrace, and the restoration of gullied land. This is a long list. We're going to look at them one after the other. I would encourage you to pay good attention. Let's look at the first one, the growing of vegetation. How can vegetation help us to control erosion in an environment? Well, this is one of the easiest and the most common way to control or to prevent soil erosion in an environment. It is simply by growing plants. We grow plants like trees, flowers, grasses, and so on within our environment. We grow these plants in open fields and so on. How will this help to control soil erosion? As plants grow, they establish roots. Remember, all plants have roots. These roots are well established into the soil and they help to hold soil particles together. So the roots of plants go deep into the soil and they help to hold soil particles together. This will help to prevent soil erosion because the particles of the soil are held together in this region. The plants can also help to reduce the effect of raindrops. Remember, as rain falls, it comes with drops. These drops are supposed to hit the ground when there is no plant around such environment. But if you have plants in such environment, instead of the raindrops to hit the ground or to hit the soil immediately, they will hit the surfaces of these leaves, and the effect or the force with which they would have gone to the ground is minimized. So this can help us prevent soil erosion in an environment. Another way to prevent soil erosion is through the practice of mulching. Mulching here is simply the use of materials such as dried leaves, grasses, straws, wood dust, polythene bags or polythene sheets, and so on to cover the surface of the soil. Mulching or mulches, these materials are called mulches. They're usually used in agricultural practices. They're used to cover the surface of the soil for various reasons. Mulches help to protect the surface of the soil, and by so doing, they reduce the effect of water and wind on the soil. So when the surface of the soil is protected by mulches, materials, whether they are polythene or whatever material you decide to use, it means that the surface of that soil is protected from the effect of moving water. It's also protected from the effect of wind. So this is how mulches can help to protect or to prevent soil erosion from occurring. We can also use strip cropping to prevent the occurrence of soil erosion. So this is the practice of strip cropping. Strip cropping here refers to the growth of 2 or more types of crops on a portion of land in alternating strips. Take note of that word, alternating strips. Let's look at these images here. We say strip cropping is when one grows more than one kind of plant on a portion of land in alternating strips. Alternating strips simply means different strips. So we have one kind of plant, and here is another kind of plant, and we have a third kind of plant. Those long rows here refers to the different strips. So these are different strips of crops. We grow them on different rows, different long rows. Now, if you take a look, we have like 3 types of plants there. So these are 3 different types of plants planted on a portion of land in different strips. How will this help us to prevent soil erosion? How will it help us to control or prevent soil erosion? These different plants help to prevent or control soil erosion in different ways. For example, the very short plants or the very short crops on this portion of land could help to prevent soil erosion by trying to filter or remove the topsoil, which may be carried or washed away by the water. It will help to filter it off the water. So as water tries to flow across this land, we are saying that short plants here may try to filter the soil away from the plant so the water doesn't carry the topsoil along. Then other types of plants, maybe the taller ones or the larger ones, could simply help to prevent soil erosion by reducing the rate or the speed at which water moves across the surface of the land, or by reducing the rate at which the raindrops hit the surface of the soil. They all perform different roles, but you're encouraged to plant different kinds of crops on alternating strips on your farmland. This could help to prevent soil erosion. We could also use long ridges, especially on farmlands, to control and prevent soil erosion. Long ridges could help a lot. They could go a long way in preventing the occurrence of soil erosion on a farmland. Farmers make use of these long ridges to control soil erosion. How do they do this? These long ridges are usually made across slopes. Take note, across slopes. So say we have a slopy area or even flat surfaces. They try to make long ridges instead of very short ones. They make long ridges on their farmland, and these long ridges will help to control and reduce the rate at which water moves over the land. So these ridges act as obstacles. They help to block the free flow of water. They cause the water to move more slowly than it should have done if there were no ridges. So the water moves slowly without washing off so much topsoil. Because we have these long ridges on the farmland, as water begins to move from this end to this other end, it will take a longer time, and at this rate, it will reduce, or the rate at which topsoil will be washed away from the surface of this land will be very, very minimal. Long ridges can also be made across different parts of a farmland. Maybe you have a very large portion of farmland and you want to divide. You could use long ridges to do that division. So the movement or the flow of water from one part of the farmland to another can also be minimized. Another way to prevent soil erosion is through the use of terrace. Terrace here can be used on a farmland, a portion of farmland. It can be used in a residential area or just within an environment that is exposed to flood. Terrace can be used on a farmland, and it involves creating large steps that appear like stairs. Remember staircase, when you're trying to climb a staircase, you find different steps. So terrace here involves creating different steps that appear like stairs on a portion of land. Terrace is usually used on a slopy land. So we use it to control erosion on a slopy land, on slopy areas. When you create these large stair-like steps, these are steps that appear like a staircase. They help to slow down the movement of water from one part to the other. So imagine if water was supposed to be flowing from this end, say during rainfall, as water drops on different surfaces, it will flow from one step to another and to another before it gets down to the bottom. As water continues to flow from one step to the other, you would agree with me that the rate at which it will flow will be reduced, and to a great extent, the amount of topsoil that will be washed off from such area of land also be reduced. So this terrace helps to slow down the movement of water, and it helps water to soak into the soil instead of just running off the surface of the soil and washing away topsoil. You can see people trying to create terrace on their land, a portion of their land. We could also use bags and brush bundles to prevent the occurrence of soil erosion. This is a very common practice. If you look closely within your environment, you'll find people who try to use sandbags or even brush bundles to help to prevent the occurrence of soil erosion. So people can fill up bags with sand, stones, gravels, and so on. They fill up these bags with all of these materials and they place them in flooded routes or across water paths, areas that are predisposed to flood. They place them around within their environment. If you have a shallow area that you suspect could get flooded easily, you place these bags on such areas to prevent the occurrence of flood. These sandbags could help to reduce the speed at which water moves across the surface of land, and this would help to prevent soil erosion. Items like brush bundles too can also be used. Brush bundles, stacks of straws. After harvesting your maize plant from the farm, you could decide to use the straws. That's what is usually left after harvesting the maize. You use the stacks of straws, that's the long straws from the maize plant. You could tie them together and place them along waterways or flooded paths to help to prevent soil erosion. You could also use fences and erosion blockers to prevent soil erosion. These fences can be built along slopy paths. They can be built along a portion of land within a farmland or even within a living environment to help to control or prevent flooding. These fences or these erosion blockers, they help to control and slow down the movement of water from one area to another. So let's take a look at these images here. These are short fences that are built across or over a farm. This fence is built over a portion of farmland. This is also built over a portion of an open field. The field is open, so the topsoil could easily get washed away or get blown away by wind. You can see different kinds of fences built over this farmland to help prevent soil erosion. However, you need to be very careful when using fences and erosion blockers to prevent soil erosion. You need to create a proper drainage channel. This is a channel that will help to move or transport water away from that portion of land. Because if you don't do so, you will have water accumulating on the surface of this land, and that could lead to flooding as well, which is something you may not want to happen in your land. The next way to prevent soil erosion is through the restoration of gullied land. Now, it is not enough to try to prevent the occurrence of soil erosion through the various methods that we have listed above or before now. It is also important that you try to correct the damages that erosion may have caused within an environment. So if you take a look at some kind of environment, it's possible that erosion has occurred so badly that it has created gullies, it has created holes and different grooves on the surface of the soil. Imagine what erosion had caused in this kind of land. This isn't looking good. It's not looking good at all. So as a person or the government of a particular area, you may want to try to correct this damage. So you try to repair this portion of land in order to prevent further soil erosion from taking place. So it is also very important that we take measures to restore the areas of land that might have been damaged by soil erosion. This will help to stop further damage to such areas. If we don't correct or repair this area, it is possible that as rain continues to fall, the water will continue to erode this portion of land until it becomes very, very bad and dangerous to the organisms that live within that environment. So the government, individuals should take measure to restore gullied lands as a way of preventing soil erosion. We have come to the end of our lesson on soil erosion. At this point, we'll quickly go over to flooding, which is the second part of our lesson. So let's look at flooding. We'll start with the word flood. Have you heard of that word before? Of course, you should have heard of the word flood. Flood simply refers to an overflow of large amount of water in an area that is usually dry. Flooding here refers to a situation in which a usually dry area of land gets covered by large amount of water. So when an area is covered by large amount of water, we call that situation flooding. So this situation here is referred to as flooding. It is mostly referred to as flooding when this amount of water is beyond its normal limits. Usually after rainfall, the soil absorbs the water, or some amount of water flow through the drainages, and within a short time, they leave the environment. But when you have large amount of water left in an environment as a result of rainfall or whatever reason, beyond its normal limit, to a point where it begins to cause problems to the environment and even to the organisms that live within that environment, we can say it is called flooding, or that situation is called flooding. So flooding occurs when you have large amounts of water within an environment and it begins to cause harm to the organism and even to the environment itself. Flood is an environmental hazard, of course. It is harmful to the environment. It is also harmful to the organisms that live within such environments. Flooding can submerge useful land. It can also submerge properties and even destroy lives. Let's proceed with our lesson on flooding. What are the causes of flooding? What do you think could cause flood within an area? Take some time to think. Rainfall. Okay, let's take a look at our list here. We have several factors that could cause flooding. These factors may be natural, so we have various natural factors. Then we have some human activities that can promote the occurrence of flooding in an area. Let's take a look at the natural factors first. We have heavy and prolonged rainfall. We have overflow of water bodies, strong winds in coastal areas, and the melting of ice and snow. All of these are natural occurrences that could cause flooding within an area. We'll begin with the first one, which is heavy and prolonged rainfall. This is the most common cause of flooding in an area. These forms of rainfall could cause water to fill up and overflow a dry land or a portion of dry land. It could also fill up drainages within an area, thereby causing flooding. So during heavy rainfall or during prolonged rainfall, water could fill up an area, it could fill up the drainages within this area and begin to cause flooding, to begin to cause harm to organisms, to the environment. You can say that situation is called flooding. This kind of flood can be caused by heavy rainfall as well as light rainfall. It can be caused by heavy rainfall that lasts for just a short period of time, say heavy rainfall that lasts for some couple of hours, or even light rainfall that lasts for a long time, say for days, for weeks, and so on. All of these forms of rainfall can cause flooding. So let's take note, it's not just about heavy rainfall. Light rainfall as well could cause flooding. The second cause of flooding here is overflow of water bodies. Sometimes due to natural occurrences such as rainfall and all that, rivers, lakes, oceans, and so on, streams within an environment could get filled up to their brim and begin to overflow their banks. From their banks, they will flow towards the nearby communities, towards the dry lands around them, and before you know it could result in flooding. So sometimes overflow of water bodies could cause flooding in nearby communities and towns. This happens especially during raining season, where as a result of excessive rainfall, large amounts of water flow towards these water bodies and fill them up. Towns that are located within coastal areas refers to areas that are close to the ocean. These towns are more likely to get flooded as a result of the overflow of water bodies. Of course, towns and cities, communities that are very close to the ocean or to water bodies could easily get flooded during excessive rainfall or as a result of overflow of water bodies. The other cause of flooding is strong winds that occur in coastal areas. This is very important. Strong winds can also cause flooding. Remember when we were talking about soil erosion we mentioned that soil erosion could be caused by wind. In this case, we are saying wind can also cause flooding. In this case, we are referring to strong wind, not just any kind of wind, but very strong wind. This could cause flooding in coastal regions. Water from the sea or from the ocean, from rivers or from different water bodies could be carried by a very strong wind or hurricane onto dry areas around these water bodies. So a strong wind could sweep off water from the ocean or from any other water bodies onto dry land, onto nearby communities, thereby causing flooding. This situation can be made worse if the wind comes with rainfall. So sometimes, like in the occurrence of hurricane, we experience very strong wind that comes along with heavy rainfall, heavy storm, and it will also sweep off water from the ocean onto surrounding communities, causing a very, very severe kind of flooding. So this is a natural occurrence that could cause flooding within an area, within coastal regions. The last cause of flooding here is the melting of ice and snow. This occurs mostly during cold seasons. During cold seasons, certain regions in the world hold up water in the solid form, in the solid state as ice. These regions are usually very, very cold, so they hold up water in the form of ice and snow. Some mountains also hold up water in the solid form as ice. They have ice on their surfaces. We can call these ones glaciers. Glaciers hold up water on their surface. They are mountains or mountain glaciers. They hold up water on their surfaces. So different areas within these cold regions just hold up water as ice during cold season. As the temperature of such environment or such regions begin to rise during the hot seasons, the ice, of course, will begin to melt. As the ice continues to melt, it could get so bad that sometimes it could result in massive flow of water into places that are usually dry, causing flooding. So the ice could melt so much that it could result in a massive flow of water into nearby communities or into dry areas, causing flooding. So this is one major factor that could cause flooding in cold regions. This is where we'll stop for today's class. But before we go, let's take the summary of all we've been learning today. We said some of the ways to control soil erosion are through the growing of vegetations, through the use of mulches, the use of ridges, the use of strip cropping, fences, bags, sandbags, brush bundles, terraces, and the restoration of gullied land. We also talked about flood, and we said flood is simply an overflow of large amounts of water in an area that is usually dry. Some natural factors that could cause flooding include heavy and prolonged rainfall, overflow of water bodies, strong winds in coastal areas, and the melting of ice and snow. Before we end today's class, I'd like us to take this question to find out how well you learned from this lesson. Question 1. The following are ways to control soil erosion except dash. The following are ways to control soil erosion except dash. A, we have through the use of ridges. B, through the practice of strip cropping. C, through the melting of ice in coastal regions. And C, through the use of sandbags and brush bundles. The correct answer here is option C. The other options are ways to control flooding in an environment except the melting of ice in coastal regions. This is supposed to cause flooding instead. The second question, which one of the following statements about flooding is not correct? A, flooding can be caused by light rain that falls for many days. B, flooding can be caused by afforestation. C, flooding can be caused by heavy rain that falls for a short period of time. If your answer was option B, then you are correct. The other options can cause flooding except option B. Flooding cannot be caused by afforestation. We have come to the end of today's class. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned all you need to learn about soil erosion, preventing soil erosion, and about flooding and its causes. I hope to see you in our next class. Thank you for staying in today's class. Bye.